It was just another night in Detroit for Officer John Carter. The seasoned cop, nearing his 50th birthday, had spent over 2 decades patrolling the city's streets. John had seen it all: crime, despair, and fleeting moments of hope. But years on the force had left him jaded. Ha, The city was restless that evening. A cold winter wind swept through the empty streets, and the faint sound of sirens echoed in the distance. As John drove his patrol car through the quieter neighborhoods, his partner, rookie officer Rachel Hayes, broke the silence. "You ever wonder if we actually make a difference?" she asked. John sighed, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Sometimes, Rachel, but most of the time, it feels like we're just putting out fires." Rachel nodded, but neither of them expected the call that would change everything. Slip crackled over the radio. "Units in the area. We've got a report of a disturbance at the corner of Maple and 3rd. Suspected trespassing. No visible weapons." John turned the car toward the location. When they arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. A dimly lit convenience store stood at the corner, its windows frosted over. Inside, they spotted a lone figure, a boy no older than 14. He was huddled near the back of the store, clutching a half-eaten sandwich. The store owner, a wiry man with a nervous demeanor, pointed toward the boy. "He's been in here for an hour. Tried to sneak out with that sandwich. I don't want trouble, but I'm not running a charity." John approached the boy slowly. "Hey, kid, what's your name?" The boy looked up, his face gaunt and pale. "Darius," he whispered. "Where are your parents, Darius?" John asked, his tone firm but not unkind. The boy didn't answer. Instead, he dropped his gaze to the floor, clutching the sandwich tighter. A split crackled over the radio. "Units in the area. We've got a report of a disturbance at the corner of Maple and 3rd. Suspected trespassing. No visible weapons." John turned the car toward the location. When they arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. A dimly lit convenience store stood at the corner, its windows frosted over. Inside, they spotted a lone figure. A boy, no older than 14. He was huddled near the back of the store, clutching a half-eaten sandwich. The store owner, a wiry man with a nervous demeanor, pointed toward the boy. "He's been in here for an hour. Tried to sneak out with that sandwich. I don't want trouble, but I'm not running a charity." John approached the boy slowly. "Hey, kid, what's your name?" The boy looked up, his face gaunt and pale. "Darius," he whispered. "Where are your parents, Darius?" John asked, his tone firm but not unkind. The boy didn't answer. Instead, he dropped his gaze to the floor, clutching the sandwich tighter. Rachel knelt beside the boy. "It's okay, Darius. We're not here to hurt you. Just tell us what's going on." After a long silence, Darius finally spoke. "I don't have parents. Not anymore. My mom died last year, and my dad, he's gone." John exchanged a glance with Rachel, his hardened demeanor softening. "Where have you been staying?" Rachel asked, gently. "Nowhere," Darius admitted. "I've been sleeping in an old car behind the gas station." John felt a pang of guilt. He had spent years arresting people for petty crimes, never stopping to consider the stories behind their actions. Looking at Darius, he saw not a criminal, but a kid struggling to survive in a world that had failed him. John stood and turned to the store owner. "How much does the sandwich cost?" The man hesitated. $3. John pulled a $5 bill from his wallet and handed it to him. "Keep the change. And let's forget about this, okay?" The store owner nodded reluctantly. Rachel looked at John, surprised. "What now?" John thought for a moment before speaking. "We can't just leave him out here. Let's take him to the precinct. Maybe we can find someone who can help." At the station, John and Rachel learned more about Darius's story. He had been in and out of foster care since his mother's death, each placement worse than the last. Tired of the abuse and neglect, he had run away 6 months ago and had been surviving on the streets ever since. As the night wore on, John found himself drawn to the boy's resilience. He saw echoes of his younger self in Darius, scrappy, stubborn, and desperate for someone to believe in him. Uh, Darius, John said, sitting across from him in the break room, what do you want to do with your life? Darius shrugged. I don't know. Just something better than this. John nodded, a spark of determination lighting in his chest. Then let's figure it out together. John decided to take a personal interest in Darius's future, going far beyond his duties as a police officer. He connected with local shelters, youth programs, and legal advocates to ensure Darius had a safe place to stay and access to resources. But it wasn't just about finding him shelter. John began mentoring Darius, teaching him life skills, helping him with schoolwork, and even introducing him to his own family. Darius flourished under John's guidance. For the first time in years, he had stability and hope. Word of John's efforts spread through the precinct and the community. Other officers, inspired by his example, began volunteering their time to mentor at-risk youth. Local businesses donated supplies and funds to support the programs John had started. The neighborhood, once fractured by mistrust, began to come together. Darius, now thriving in school and dreaming of becoming a social worker, became a symbol of what was possible when people chose compassion over judgment. Years later, Darius graduated from high school with honors. At his graduation ceremony, he invited John to sit in the front row. So, during his speech, Darius looked directly at John and said, "There's one person here who didn't give up on me when everyone else did. Officer John Carter, you changed my life, and because of you, I'm going to spend my life helping others the way you helped me." The audience erupted into applause, but John, sitting quietly, felt tears welling in his eyes. John retired from the force a few years later, but his legacy lived on. The programs he had started continued to grow, impacting countless lives. As for Darius, he went on to fulfill his dream of becoming a social worker, dedicating his career to helping children like himself. And he never forgot the cop who had seen him not as a suspect, but as a boy with potential. Um, in the end, their story wasn't just about one boy and one cop. It was about the power of kindness to transform lives, communities, and even the world. 5 years had passed since Darius's high school graduation, and much had changed. Darius was now a college graduate, working as a youth advocate in Detroit. He had devoted his life to helping kids like himself, those who had been overlooked, dismissed. Marcus's hand. Marcus smiled back. "So are you, Officer Daniels. Thanks for believing in me." As Daniels watched Marcus celebrate with his family, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. One encounter, one act of understanding had the power to change lives, and he was determined to keep making a difference. It had been 6 months since the rainy night that brought Marcus Johnson and Officer Daniels together. What had started as an uncomfortable encounter on a lonely street had blossomed into an unlikely friendship. For Marcus, Daniels was no longer just an officer in uniform, but a symbol that change within the system was possible. Daniels, too, had been profoundly affected by the incident. As a veteran officer, he had witnessed countless moments of tension between law enforcement and the communities they served. But meeting Marcus had given him a renewed sense of purpose, to be a bridge, not a barrier. Their bond became a story of hope in Atlanta, a city grappling with its share of challenges. But their journey was far from over. One Saturday morning, Marcus received an unexpected call from Daniels. "Marcus," Daniels said, his voice upbeat. "How do you feel about speaking at a community policing forum next month?" Marcus hesitated. Public speaking wasn't exactly his comfort zone. "I don't know, Officer Daniels," he admitted. "What would I even say?" "Say the truth," Daniels replied. People need to hear your story. They need to know the impact of these moments. And Marcus, call me James. We're friends now. After a moment of reflection, Marcus agreed. He knew this was bigger than him. It was a chance to inspire change. The forum was held in the city's largest auditorium, packed with local leaders, activists, police officers, and families. Marcus stood on stage, nervous but resolute, with James by his side for support. When I think back to that night, Marcus began, his voice steady but emotional. I remember feeling small, powerless, like I didn't matter. But one person saw me, not just as a suspect, not just as a kid in a hoodie, but as a human being. He paused, looking directly at James, who nodded encouragingly. Officer Daniels showed me that even in moments of misunderstanding, we can choose empathy. And that choice can change lives or left behind. One rainy evening, as Darius was leaving his office, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Officer John Carter, now retired and living in a quieter part of Michigan. Hey, Darius. Haven't seen you in a while. Let me know if you want to grab dinner sometime. Got something to talk to you about. Darius smiled, fondly remembering the man who had changed his life. Of course, he replied. They met at a small diner on the outskirts of the city. John looked older, but his warm demeanor was the same. After some catching up, John leaned in, his expression serious. Darius, he said, I've been thinking. What we started back then, it was good, but it wasn't enough. There are still so many kids out there who need help. I have an idea, but I need you with me. John explained his plan, a citywide program that combined mentorship, job training, and educational support for at-risk youth. Unlike other initiatives, this one would involve not just social workers, but also police officers, community leaders, and former at-risk kids like Darius. We call it the Bridge Project, John said, his eyes lighting up, because that's what it's about. Bridging the gaps between people, between communities, between the system and the ones it's supposed to serve. Darius was intrigued. It sounds incredible, John, but do you think we can actually pull it off? John grinned. Kid, if we could turn your life around, we can do anything. The first step was to secure funding. Darius and John spent weeks pitching the idea to local businesses, city officials, and nonprofits. They faced plenty of skepticism. Another program? One city council member scoffed. What makes this one different? Darius didn't flinch, because it's not just a program, it's a commitment. We're not here to put a Band-Aid on a broken system. We're here to rebuild it, one life at a time. His passion was contagious. Slowly but surely, they gained support. A prominent tech company donated seed money, a local college offered scholarships, and even the police department agreed to participate. The Bridge Project launched with a pilot group of 20 teens, most of whom had been labeled troublemakers by their schools or the justice system. Darius personally mentored a boy named Malik, who reminded him of his younger self, angry, guarded, and skeptical of anyone trying to help. Malik pushed back at every turn. Why do you care, man? You don't even know me. Darius stayed patient. Over time, Malik began to open up. He confessed his dreams of becoming a chef, but admitted he didn't believe it was possible. Let's make it possible, Darius said. With the help of the Bridge Project, Malik enrolled in a culinary program, eventually landing an internship at a well-known restaurant. Just as the Bridge Project was gaining momentum, tragedy struck. One of the program's participants, a 16-year-old named Andre, was arrested during a routine traffic stop. The incident sparked outrage, with many accusing the officers involved of racial profiling. The media caught wind of the story, and soon the Bridge Project itself was under scrutiny. Darius was furious, but knew he had to stay composed. He called John, who had been watching the news from home. This could ruin everything, Darius said, his voice shaking. No, it won't, John replied firmly. This is exactly why we started this. To face these moments head on. Let's fix this. The story of the bridge project gained national attention. News outlets covered its successes, from Malick's budding culinary career to the drastic reduction in juvenile arrests in the neighborhoods it served. Hmm. Hmm. The story of the bridge project gained national attention. News outlets covered its successes, from Malick's budding culinary career to the drastic reduction in juvenile arrests in the neighborhoods it served. Darius and John were invited to speak at a national conference on community policing. Standing on stage together, they shared their journey. Oh, This isn't about heroes or saviors, John said. It's about seeing people, truly seeing them, and believing in their potential, Darius added. We started with a simple idea that one act of kindness can create a ripple effect. And now we're seeing those ripples turn into waves.